I go and I say, okay, look, please, you investigators, everybody, I give you 3 months, I'm told, to prove innocence or guilt. I'm told, by the way, that pronouncement itself is unconstitutional. You have no power to say 3 months. But yet there's a person there, I don't know their innocence or guilt, but there's a person, a human being, a Kenyan, like you and me. We set up a multi-agency so that we can coordinate our affairs. Still no movement. I sit with the Chief Justice. Please, why don't we expedite this? Still no movement. The judiciary. I have even no role. I even actually challenged it, and they went because it's themselves, right? And I was told that the Judicial Service Commission is the one that has the role, and they went because wenyewe kwa wenyewe kujidefend. They'll give me one name, and my only role is to sign. Who is a judge? Who is the Chief Justice? I have no role. But yet, I stand accused that the executive is not doing enough. What has it got to do? I don't even have power, like I said, to appoint you or to sack you. So, mnataka nifanye nini jameni? That I have not done.
That now infamous statement from the president himself. Daisy?
You know, first of all, let me say this. Serving in cabinet is not a right, okay? And while due process must be followed, the president has every right to remove anybody, even who is suspected of corruption. He can remove them from his cabinet because he's the appointing authority.
But some say he did. He lost a third of his cabinet through corruption after his State of the Nation address in 2015.
We have this very dubious thing in Kenya called stepping aside because people need to resign, you know. I think that one of the challenges that the president has is this thing comes too close to home, you know, and that reluctance of acting because of the cost, the political cost of dealing with corruption. These are your trusted lieutenants. These are people you entrusted with certain responsibilities and certain jobs, and they failed you along the way, or they failed under that. But for me, that shouldn't even be an issue, because if you are my ally, you shouldn't even put me in that position where I'm faced with the reality of that I have to sack you. But then for the president, remember that leadership is about leading. You cannot cite other, you know, other institutions in your failures, because one of the reasons he has been appointed to that office as the president is to offer leadership and to demand for action where it is not being taken.
Okay. Alex, will it cost him his job on the 8th of August? Conversely, will people not vote for NASA, for example? Because even a number of the principals within that coalition, you know, have been adversely mentioned in some, you know, big-time scandals in the country. Will it cost the president his job? Will it cost Raila Odinga the presidency?
I think Uhuru is safe. Corruption is a non-issue, as he's said many times himself. And what the voters are signaling is that it's not one of the top things. And then our politics is not necessarily determined on issues. It's ethnic mobilization and ethnic bonding and a ton of deception and large political interests at play. And it's about what you can put on the table.
But they also suffer
it's
devices of
we
corruption,
aren't there because even the
strongholds from either side.
Even the political conversation is not moving towards a robust conversation on integrity.
But how are you going to move it in that direction?
On management of public affairs.
And that's an interesting one. So
NASA
how do we make this election about corruption?
It's only the fringe independent candidates who were talking about this thing. The main candidates, the frontline candidates in the front parties are not talking about corruption. They don't want to go there because it is it is too risky.
It's like, you know, living in an igloo and, you know, lighting a fire. Exactly. You know, you're simply going to melt your own house down because, and this is on either side, by the way. President Uhuru Kenyatta will not lose because of corruption. That one, you can take that home because the other side is a mirror image. I tell you, you know.
And Wanjiru, then there's other candidates because there's 8 presidential candidates in this one. And like Alex says, you know, they're constantly calling out the big 2, if you like, you know, saying, yeah, but there's, you know, something going on there. Is there a hope that somebody's listening to them as that lone voice in the dark? I don't know.
In fact, before I answer that, I'd like to just, I think it's important for us as civil society actors, as media, to disabuse the notion that the Constitution has hampered the fight against corruption. Because like I said, there are those departments, there are those ministries, there are those institutions that consistently have a good record. And maybe we need to start focusing on those that are able to meet the requirements of the Auditor General report and say, you know, what happened here? So that we can begin to say that despite really, you know, what is a national disaster, we do have, we have pockets of good leadership. Because corruption is about good leadership, it's about understanding the law, having the technical proficiency, having the political will, and running the system so that you make sure you deal with those cartels.
So there's no problem with the laws in this country and the Constitution. It doesn't tie the president's hands behind his back?
No. Okay. The problem is not the law. The problem is the lack of political will. Why? And you know, more than lack of political will, if you have a big national, you know, procurement that is obviously corrupt in the way it's managed, and the president comes out defending the Eurobond and all of that, you're sending a signal to every other officer that this is okay. So, you know, the president can't, drink wine and preach water. You need, corruption is learned behavior, it's socialized. And that's why our young people have figured out this is a big hoax. We're being told, you know, corruption is bad, but it pays. You get the big cars, you get the TV time, you get all of that. So we need leadership, and we don't have that leadership. And maybe we need to start seeking out the minority leaders because they are very upstanding, proficient people in government, and so we need to hold on to that. In terms of corruption becoming an issue, I think our conversation has changed. I'm not as pessimistic. Corruption is a symptom of something larger, and like I say, I think it's a symptom of the of political capture of systems, and that's a big animal to fight, especially when the beneficiaries are in government and they're getting into government. Like you see, you've got one political funder who's able to cobble together a coalition that goes into government and dictates the national projects of this government. And it's going to happen again. If that is happening, then don't be surprised when the minions are caught up in the negative spillover of grand-scale corruption. But the conversation is changing. And it's not necessarily about corruption, but Kenyans are getting issue-based. Maybe it's not the issues we imagine or articulated in the way that we imagine, but they are becoming discerning. The rejection of the six-piece suit, telling the president, forget it, we will pick our own candidate. Whether it's because, a governor like Kiambu Governor Kaboro actually has a very good track record as a governor. He's one of the good performers. And he was failed during the primaries. Why? Because of the gender question. Who would have thought, that the gender
question, issue like that
would summarily dismiss a high-performing governor. Now, we may sit here and say, oh, but he works really well. But voters have that thing that matters to them. And I think the gain that we are having is voters are now able to express what matters to them, and they will express it in the polls.
An issue.
And then,
based, yes.
The other thing we are finding that's really interesting, whether it plays out or not, is the interest in independence. So, voters really understand that these big parties are about themselves. And they want candidates who speak my language. So I don't think the voting pattern, national to all the way to county assembly, will be uniform.
So voters we're starting to see issue-based.
We are seeing issue-based.
All right.
And we are seeing...
No matter how slow, but it's a start.
It's change.
I think the Tobago issue with women is really interesting. Because my sense is that this is something that people immediately understood. They could deal with it. They could understand the travesty of that characterization. corruption is way too complex. They don't
Okay,
see
so how
it.
do we make it?
It doesn't hurt
how do
them
we
as
make
much
it
as
simple?
what Kabogo said about women in Kiambu.
So how do we make it simple?
I do think
By
it's simple.
educating the citizen.
Explaining.
And you
Uh-huh.
know,
The
the more
cost,
that
for instance.
the citizens begin to link their livelihoods, the challenges that they're facing with the kind of leadership they have, and the governance system, they begin to change. And that's what's happening with devolution. Actually, devolution is actually bringing that close to home. There are counties where the entire
Yes.
county assembly,
yeah.
Were
MCAs,
dismissed.
MPs, and
Right.
they were all dismissed. Why? Because the people began to see that these guys aren't doing anything for us.
Okay.
That's the beauty of devolution. Devolution is beginning to change the dynamics. You see, like what Shiro has cited, where now they are able to tell not just the president, but even the opposition leader.
Yeah.
He has met hostility
Yes,
where
he
he's
has.
told forget about,
Absolutely.
because they've been advocating for the 6-piece
6-piece
suiting,
suit,
and
yeah.
they're like, no, because they saw how people were scammed in
Right.
the nomination exercise, and they began to see that cronyism.
Yeah.
So they're ready to now listen
Okay.
to what leaders are bringing, and it is happening, and it's really interesting. If you listen to the conversation, they are beginning to make demands on their leaders because they have understood public participation has been facilitated to
Okay.
help them understand governance system and to understand that money, because our leaders have behaved with CDF and all these other sub-sovereign funds as though they are, going to somehow offer charity to the people. But the people have
people are
understood
saying,
that these are
no.
our resources.
We will
and
decide.
we will prioritize
Okay.
our projects, and we must make sure that when it's
Yes.
done.
Oh, now you're touching on Shiro's area.
Okay.
Can I jump in there? If you look at the MP voting patterns, last two elections, the attrition rate has been continually
Yeah,
high
yeah.
ever since CDF came into
Yeah.
play. So there is a direct link between local governance and the way citizens view their leaders. Now, they don't articulate it in the words that we want to hear, but they are very voters are ruthless with their local leaders, and I think that is what Daisy is saying. That connection, voters do understand.
So the minute the
they
funds got
understand.
closer to the grassroots,
Exactly.
they were then able to see
Performance.
misappropriation.
In fact, I think the question is performance.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
people will say, what have you done for us?
Yeah.
And it's not in terms of buying votes. In terms of, was there water? Was there medicine in the hospital? Did our children get the scholarships? Or did your relatives get
Yeah.
them? So I do believe there's a change. And we have to stop, I think we have to devolve our mindset so that we stop equating all the election decisions with the national.
Okay.
The dynamics,
still
at,
run like what?
the dynamics at the national
70%
is
of
very
the budget
different.
is still spent up here.
Yeah.
Well,
It is, of course, you need
well,
the
point I'm
national-
making is this: devolving our thinking is important because then you validate the citizen.
Yes.
Because when the citizen sends home, at the nomination process, sends
An
home
entire
an
county.
in
County
fact,
assembly,
yes,
yeah.
Not just
They-
the county assembly,
But the
members
governor,
of parliament,
and
only
members
in
of
the
parliament,
Nandi
only
county,
one, yeah.
So
only the senator was
Yeah.
nominated for governor.
Right.
The
But
rest.
here is-
So we
Okay,
need
let's hear from Alex.
we need to validate what citizens did and not say, well, they don't understand. It's too no, they understand
but
and
here's-
they made their voice
Yeah.
heard. Now the problem is they then get political parties that give them rigged options where you have one bad candidate and one less bad candidate, and now you're having a lot of interest in the independence.
independence,
So
because-
Kenyans understand.
All right, Alex.
I think we haven't gone the full mile because this revolving door of MPs they getting kicked out every 5 years, and I've seen this, and I've lived here quite a bit, and I've been to many constituencies. You kick in one guy, you kick out one guy, and the other guy who comes in starts to do exactly the same kinds of things. He builds a new culture deep, he does this, then he's kicked out. This turnover, this churning of MPs, when you get a new crop in the parliament, the level of public discourse and debate doesn't change. So you're basically bringing mediocre. You're just replacing mediocre people
starting
with
to
other
say
mediocre
that
guys.
maybe we kick these out. Okay, now we realize we
When
have
we
a
see the
problem
real
because we're
change.
bringing in different ones, and then
But you see,
mediocrity-
like there are certain
It's musical chairs.
constituencies.
It's
It's
musical
It's not
chairs,
necessarily
I think.
musical chairs because there are certain constituencies, and I think the media has been looking at some of these constituencies where they do not re-elect their members. I mean, they just keep
churning them out.
churning
Okay.
them out until we
So
get
they
a
can't
different
fed
outcome.
up.
But the
So-
national
Yeah.
still remains important because the national government is still in charge of many
of a
institutions.
huge chunk.
We
Okay.
do need goodwill at that level to facilitate and to validate. No, even
I
in
know
terms
it.
of
We're
of
running
bringing-
out
You
of
know,
time,
Daisy,
guys.
I know
And
he
we have
said
to
national
close
is
in
not
30
important.
seconds.
I
Yeah.
just said that you have to devolve the mindset
Yes.
and validate what citizens are doing.
Exactly,
Okay.
and
we-
the national
we-
government must act to
All right.
validate
We
that
never
by
had,
also.
Daisy, we never had the option of independence before. The fact that there's interest on independence means that
Okay.
we've been locked into poor political choices
Gentlemen,
because of
Exactly.
our
So
political
Ladies,
now the choices
that
are
is
opening
where
up.
we have to
is
leave
changing.
it. The conversation is changing. Is
We
it
are
a game
waking
of
up.
musical chairs? Well, less than 30 days from today. But this has been insightful in terms of talking about what happens at the top, but also that there is something that's happening at
Something
the
is happening.
bottom.
Kenya's changing.
Kenya's changing.
Even in terms of the campaign, look,
All right.
Raila campaigned in Kiambu.
Oh, yeah.
You know, success. Kenya is
It's
changing.
changing.
Kenya
And
is
that's
changing.
That's
I think that's the refrain that we can all agree on, even if it's, you know, musical
Slowly,
chairs.
but
even
it's
if it's slowly,
changing.
but it's changing. Daisy Amdani, Alex Awiti, and Manjiro Gikonyo, how time flies. Thank you very much for your insights. This is definitely not a question we can answer conclusively in an hour, but let's listen to what the people on the ground have to say. Ali Hassan Kauleni, still with the balloting.
Asante sana mwenzangu Yvonne, nimekupata vizuri sana na jopo lako huko mkiangazia masuala haya ya ufisadi. Manake kama ulivyosikia lile jopo ni kimombo musical chairs of corruption, ghost of corruption. Hapa kutoka jiji hili la Nairobi jioni hii tunasema jinamizi la ufisadi. Na mtazamaji, angalia hizo sura, angalia hayo macho. Wanafuata zile kauli za wanasiasa kwamba tulinde kura. Baadhi yao nimewaambia usiku ni mwingi waende nyumbani, wamekataa. Wanasema tunahakikisha kwamba Hasani haya matokeo hatutaki kwenda mahakamani. Na uhesabu wanamalizia Levis, wanamalizia kuhesabu. Manake tumeuliza baina ya tume ya kupambana na ufisadi EACC, taasisi ya urais kwa maana rais, mahakama, mwananchi na kaunti, nani ndo kafeli sana katika vita dhidi ya ufisadi? Na tunamalizia kabla ya kupata matokeo rasmi. Tuna mwananchi hapa mmoja, tunaweza tukasema naye akatueleze hali namna gani. Brother, jina nani?
Kwa majina naitwa Samba Francis.
Samba, Nairobi unajihusisha na nini?
Na hapa Nairobi nafanya mechanic.
Wewe ni mekanika na tumezungumzia ufisadi. Ufisadi umekuwa ni wimbo, tunaelekea sasa uchaguzi. Wengi wanasema kwamba atakayepambana na ufisadi viwavyo labda watamchagua. Unafikiri ni nani ameshindwa kupambana na ufisadi nchini?
Mimi kwa maoni yangu nasema ni rais ameshindwa kupambana na ufisadi.
Kwa nini? Kwa nini? Una labda sababu?
Juu hata mahakama ikifanya kazi yake unapata rais anaingilia mambo ya mahakama. Unachiki.
Kivipi? Sidhani kama una ushahidi wa hayo unayosema. Mfano,
nasema hivi, mahakama ikitoa maoni yake unapata rais anaingilia. Ameshindwa kufanya juu hata tukienda kwa parliament rais akona majority ya wabunge. Wanafaa watoe uamuzi.
Aha. Yeah. Hayo ni maoni ya Mkenya huyu ambaye yupo hapa mtazamaji, na naambiwa wanamalizia watakuwa wanatupa matokeo hivi punde. Rafiki yangu, jina nani?
Kwa jina naitwa Michael.
Mike, unafanya nini Nairobi?
Mimi ni designer, nafanya pale Lavington.
Ufisadi, tumeshindwa kupambana na ufisadi.
Kwa maoni yangu mimi naona rais amezembea kwa kazi kwa sababu wako na majority in parliament, alafu hakuna kitu inamzuia kufight corruption. Corruption, tuanze kufight corruption kutoka juu.
Haya, kabla hujamalizia tutapata matokeo na nyote naomba tushirikiane hapa, karibia hapa. Utatueleza haraka manake naambiwa matokeo ndo kama haya mtazamaji, na mnaweza mkashuhudia pamoja na kwamba kuna giza. Naambiwa kwamba mwananchi alikuwa na kura 20, wale wanasema mwananchi ameshindwa. Alafu EACC 17, kaunti ya Nairobi kura 1, alafu mahakama 18, alafu rais mnasema amefeli 87. Ukweli urongo? Kwa hiyo mwisho wa siku mnasema the buck stops with the president. Sina cha ziada, ni kauli hizo za Wakenya wakazi wa jiji la Nairobi wamezungumza, wametoa kauli yao. Sina cha ziada kutoka jiji hili la Nairobi ela na kuregesha studio Hassan Juma na Zinzi. Wanasemaji wa Kenya kwenye mitandao?
Asante sana somo wangu Hassani Ali. Leo nikubatize basi manake ni Hassani Ali Kauleni Chebukati huyo wetu. Na pia katika mitandao ya kijamii kelele ni hizo hizo, manake wadau wamepiga kelele sana kuhusiana na mdahalo wa leo Zinzi.
Hiya Hassan, let us remind our viewers what our Twitter poll question is today on Kivumbi 2017. Who do you blame for the most for corruption in Kenya? So we have the citizen, judiciary, the EACC, or the president. And so far, 1,500 of you have casted your vote on our Twitter handle. If you haven't, you have about 2 hours and 1 minute left to be exact. But these are just some of your comments. Hassan, would you like to read one of them?
We just need to hang several high-profile people caught in corruption. We'll never hear about corruption again.
Okay, Steve. Steve, you say, I blame the government and our leaders. We cannot finish corruption. And at the same time, we still rig in back the same corrupt leaders, okay?
Mwendwa Mbithi huyo anasema, I blame a lack of political will from Jubilee, incompetent prosecutors and complicit judiciary, plus lame witnesses for corruption.
All right, Amri, you say the president is whom does he expect to initiate the fight on corruption? The Auditor General. Uhuru is a proven follower. He can't lead, all right? So those are just some of the feedback that we are getting. Make sure you're using the hashtag Kivumbi2017 on Twitter so we can be able to receive your thoughts in regards to tonight's topic. Here on Kivumbi2017, we're deciding to put a spotlight on corruption, all right? So right now we want to take a short break, but when we come back, it is time for Monday Night News, and Ivano Kwara Matole will be taking us through that. Let's take a quick break.